Hi, friends. Welcome to Productive Passions. I'm your host, Christy Tagey, and I welcome you to join me for a deeply personal and inspiring conversation with Allison Schreier, co-founder and president at Xenia TV. Imagine loving someone and slowly noticing the small things that made them who they are begin to change in ways you can't explain. That's what happened to Allison when her husband was diagnosed with young onset dementia. Over time, she stepped into the role of caregiver, facing fear, confusion, and the heartbreak of not always knowing how to reach the person she loved. In this episode, Allison shares the raw reality of caregiving and the surprising power of a calm screen. Xenia TV helps people reconnect and communicate, reduces agitation and anxiety, supports cooperation with daily tasks, and can lessen the need for psychotropic medications. Most importantly, it creates peaceful moments of shared presence, small respites that matter. Allison's work is a beautiful example of turning personal pain into public good. It advances the UN's Sustainable Development Goal number 3, good health and well-being, by improving quality of life for people with dementia and their caregivers, and SDG number 9, industry, innovation, and infrastructure through creative, compassionate tech that changes how we care. Stay with us for a story of resilience, love, and innovation. A caregiver who became an entrepreneur to help others find connection and calm. You and I were connected through a mutual contact, and he said to me, "You've got to meet Allison because of the work that she's doing and what she has started." So I would like to ask you, in your own words, to tell us about what you've been doing and why you've chosen to do that.
So I guess I'll start with the why, which is that my husband was diagnosed at the age of 47 with dementia, with frontotemporal dementia. And eventually he moved into a long-term care community, a memory care community, and he had gone nonverbal. And it was very unsatisfying to try and communicate with him because he couldn't speak back, right? And so I was never sure, like, am I really connecting? And conversations became very transactional, just me like blathering about like, and then this happened today, and then that happened. And so eventually I figured out that, if I bring in some kind of visual stimulation, that not only will it help me tell a more interesting story, but it also gives you something to look at. And so I would bring in magazines and pictures, and eventually I started bringing in my iPhone and my iPad, and I would show him images, and I would make little movies using my iPad and my iPhone. We were able to follow those together and look at the images and sort of see the story that the images were telling together. And he seemed to be able to follow it. And so I wound up, there's more to the story, but to just cut to the chase of what I'm doing now is I have created a streaming service, which is called Xenia TV, that is specifically videos that have been created to be digestible by and engaging for people who are living with dementia. So as part of that experiment with my husband, what I discovered is that, so people who are living with dementia can't necessarily track a plot or tell fact from fiction or process rapidly moving audio and video. And so they need content that they can actually pay attention to. And it's not really that Xenia is supposed to be sort of the other Netflix, right? Netflix for people with dementia, like this is the way to entertain people. It really is a tool that uses the television as the box through which the tool is delivered. Because the videos, we've done lots of research and numerous pilots with long-term care communities as well as with family caregivers. And what we know is that the videos help reduce and soothe agitation. They help create connection and engagement, which is what I was looking for out of the gate. And we also have videos that are specifically intended to help people feel good about doing activities of daily living, whether that's using the toilet or getting dressed or showering, whatever it might be.
I smile because you and I have had a conversation before. So you know that I'm an occupational therapist by background. So ADL, so activities of daily living, that's my thing. And so is working in long-term care as an occupational therapist when I was practicing. And dementia management and teaching and training caregivers and staff about dementia management was one of my specialties and something I love doing. But I want to go back for a minute. So I say that because that first conversation you and I had, boy, we really hit it off. And for me, it was so exciting because I was treating patients. I was taking care of people before your technology existed. So you were interested to start this because of what you were experiencing personally. So a couple questions. How did your husband's reactions change from before you started showing videos with him? I don't mean what you've created now, but when you first came in, you were just telling him about what was going on in the day. How did that change when you started showing him videos on your phone?
It would cause him to be more present with me because there's something that he could actually pay attention to. So when I'm just talking, I think that it was more difficult for him to track what I was saying. But when we are looking at something together, he was able to follow that and then be able to kind of connect the words with what we were looking at. When I last spoke with you, I don't know if I had already attended the Michigan Assisted Living Association conference. I don't think I had.
I don't think you had.
So I was there a few weeks ago and I led a panel, and the topic for the panel was low tech, no tech solutions for people who are living with dementia. And the beautiful thing, Christy, is that all of the panelists were people who were living with dementia. And
really?
So, yes, they were people who were
as themselves or caregivers.
It was themselves, the people who were living with dementia.
Wow.
And they were all connected through the National Council for Dementia Minds, which is one of several phenomenal organizations in the United States that is a resource for people who are living with dementia, who want to be connected to others for advocacy, for education, for support. So there's this panel of, I think there were 7 people living with dementia on the panel. And I asked the question, what do you like to watch on TV? And all but one of them said, oh, I don't watch TV. It's too many characters. I can't follow them. The video is moving and the audio is happening and I can't connect it. It just frustrates me. So it's not something that I can do. So, and this completely falls in line with the research that I was doing while I was kind of conceiving of Zinnia, right? Is that I read papers and I talked to educators and academics and scientists to figure out, like, why is it that people who are living with dementia seem to have difficulty watching regular TV? And it's for all of those reasons. So what we need to do is make sure when we're presenting something that's a TV type of format, that it is something that is moving at a pace that people can pay attention to. And so it's a beautiful thing, right? When I talk to family caregivers who report that I was actually able to get dinner made today because this video that my mom was watching about babies or about puppies or about sewing or about baking or about gardening, right? Whatever it is that she was watching was engaging enough that she could stay focused, and I would hear her laughing and talking to the TV, and I'm able to actually get something done. So in addition to all of the benefits that are provided for the person living with dementia, there is a huge caregiver benefit, which is not just moments of respite. It's also just this idea that if the person who I'm supporting is happy, well, gosh, then that makes me happy, because that's one of my big jobs as a caregiver, is to try to figure out, how do I bring ease and joy into the life of the person that I'm supporting? And that's a huge part of what Zinnia provides.
So what I'd like to do is ask you to give us the website, because if somebody's watching right now and they want to open up that website and take a look at it, where can they find Zinnia TV?
Yeah, sure. So it's Zinnia like the flower. And that comes from the fact that I am a mad gardener. And zinnias are one of my favorite flowers. And what I love about them is that they thrive no matter what's going on, just like people with dementia can. And so anyway, it's zinniatv.com. So ZINNIATV.com is our website.
So I'm very interested in knowing if you're involved with senior living or other types of living environments that are incorporating the use of Zinnia TV, and what are they saying to you about it?
Yeah, sure. So a big boon for us, Christy, was that we came out with our app in the fall of 2022. Right around that time, there was a company who we were doing some partnership with. They were doing a presentation to Brookdale trying to pitch their product. And they had a list they had a slide that had some of the people they're working with, and one of them was Zinnia TV. Brookdale reached out to us and said, hey, we want to know more about you guys. And we wound up that November and December. So we had just released our app, and we did 2-month trial, a pilot with Zinnia at their memory care communities, at 5 memory care communities.
And Brookdale is a big organization for people
They
who
are.
don't
They're the
know.
largest.
See, and so kudos to them for adopting it. And are they still using it?
So we did the pilot with them, and there are some Brookdales that are using them. The sad part of the story is that the person who was our champion and who drove this pilot left. We're still very good friends with her, Juliette Holtklinger. She's amazing. And she's still doing work as a dementia consultant, and we do work with her. We adore her. And so we are in some Brookdales. We did not go nationwide. It's something that we would still love to do. But the results of the pilot were fantastic. And they pretty much jived with what had come out of 2 years of research that we did prior to releasing our app. So in surveys that they did themselves, that Brookdale conducted on their own with their staff, what they determined was that Zinnia was hugely effective at helping to promote connection between the staff and the people who were living with dementia, that it helped reduce and soothe agitation.
If somebody didn't hear that, that is one of the most challenging aspects of some people's dementia. And I say some because it's not everybody doesn't have agitation, but sundowning, all of that for caregivers, it is hard when somebody is angry with you or extremely anxious or nervous, soothing them. So what you're saying is that with the use of Zinnia, that helped the caregivers, the staff, and the person with dementia to have things settle down and feel more calm for them. Is that a fair assessment?
That is fair. And I'm going to give you 2 different
Please.
Anecdotes that support that. So one of them is from a family caregiver, a lovely guy named Arnie, who was supporting his wife, Terry. And what Arnie said to me is this. He said, so here's the deal. I know that there's a very good possibility that at some time during the day, Terry is going to start to escalate. And I, prior to my experience with Zinnia, would escalate along with her, right? Because I'm starting to get upset because I need to figure out how to calm her down. And he said, what I have discovered is that there are 1 or 2 very specific videos that reliably, when I play those for her, she gets engaged, she starts focusing, and she calms down. And he said, so now when she starts to get upset, I don't feel my own blood pressure starting to go up because I know that I've got Zinnia in my back pocket and I'm going to be able to soothe her by showing her this particular video. So that's like, for a family caregiver to not have to go through that constant, like, what am I going to do now to fix the problem is huge. But the other thing that I think is really cool is that fairly early on, I was at a conference where a person who works in long-term care approached me, and she said, I need to tell you how we're using this thing. We've got this woman who used to be a pediatric nurse, 40 years as a pediatric nurse, and she routinely gets into a state where, per her doctor's orders, the solution is that we give her a dose of an antipsychotic. And she said, so now what I'm seeing
So a chemical restraint.
Chemical restraint, exactly. She becomes a fall risk. She's completely out of it. And we all know that antipsychotics are not intended for people who are living with dementia and that they're way overused.
Yes. Yes.
And she said, so what we found is, she said, so one day I just said to my cohort, look, we know what her background is. Let's see what happens if before giving her the antipsychotic, let's try playing that baby's video for her and see what happens. And she said, Allison, it was amazing because she immediately focused in on the babies. She said she got really close to the screen and she was reaching out and giggling and cooing at the babies. And she said, we did not need the antipsychotic that day. And she said, and now we've worked with her doctor to change her care plan so that the antipsychotic is only if Zinnia doesn't work. And when we did our research at the University of British Columbia, they found a very similar result. And in fact, they shared a video with us that they shot of a gentleman who would get into a state of high anxiety. And so they would lead him into a room where they had Zinnia projected on a wall. Knowing that he was mad about cars, they would put on the Cars video. And in this video that they shared with us, you see this guy coming into the room and he's visibly irritated, but he looks up and he sees the cars and he immediately becomes the expert in the room. And he goes up to the front where the screen is displayed, the cars, and he starts talking to the people who are with him about the cars. Because imagine what that feels like, right? I'm the guy. Like, this is my thing. And I can now be the person who's in charge and the person who's respected.
We had talked about that a little bit about, and I'll share a little bit of my experience is people want to be productive. Even people with dementia, even people with advanced dementia, they may not say, I want to be productive. But to your example, this guy who saw the cars and that was his thing, they get to light up. And it's going from this world that's overstimulating and frustrating. I mean, imagine living that. I know you get that. But for people watching, that frustration and then something you love comes on. And it has the power to change it. And now I can talk, and maybe it's not sensible, but maybe it is. I can talk about what I'm seeing, or at least I understand what I'm seeing. I don't think enough people realize how powerful that is. Yeah. And we talked about before, back in my day, which is a while ago, we would create sensory diets, things that would help stimulate people with dementia or other cognitive impairments, or to calm them down. And the reason you might want to stimulate somebody is because they're not as responsive as you need them to be to eat safely or to wake up in the morning. So that might be times when you're doing stimulation. And then more calming things are when somebody's agitated or anxious, sad, they need to be redirected. I know I shared with you the story of a place where I worked, where a woman said, where's Charlie? Where's Charlie? Where's Charlie? Over and over. And finally, one of the nurses looked and said, Julie, or whatever her name was, Charlie's dead. And he's been dead for 20 years. Oh. Right. And I said, and she was a good person, but she herself was frustrated. So understand people who work with people with dementia also get frustrated because it's a challenge. But I said to her, do you know what you just did? You told her for the first time that her husband was dead, and she'll forget in 10 minutes, but she's going to feel really sad, and she doesn't know where that sadness came from. So something like Zinnia can help to redirect, to offer another stimulation, to offer another something to think about. So I want to come back to another thing you said about again, years ago, you used to see in clinical notes, somebody's agitated. Mr. Smith was agitated, shot of Ativan given with good results. Mr. Smith now sleeping. That is chemical restraint, and you're not allowed to do that. Very few exceptions. So the other thing I'm hearing is that this may be a tool to help reduce medication management of behavioral or of symptom issues.
Oh, yeah. And something that is really exciting is that based on our work at the University of British Columbia, the Brenda Strafford Foundation in Calgary was able to get funding through a Canadian resource to do a study to gather quantitative results. And we don't have those yet. I'm waiting for those to do quantitative results around the use of Zinnia in memory care communities to reduce inter-resident agitation, to reduce the use of antipsychotics, and to reduce emergency room trips. And so if we are able to prove out numerically, right, that Zinnia helps in those ways, that's huge.
That is huge.
Yeah. And, there's been a lot of attention focused on the use of music to soothe. There was a report that I was reading recently that has an often cited finding that talks about the fact that, like, for every dollar spent on music therapy within a community, that they save like $2.41 or something in care costs. And I really believe that the same thing is true of therapy that uses visual stimulation. It's just that I think that for a long time, there's been a kind of a stigma against using TV. And I'm there, right? I'm there. One of the things that was so troubling for me when I would show up at the care community is that I would find my husband parked literally because he's in a wheelchair, right? Yes. In front of a TV, and he'd be zoned out, looking around the room, kind of lost, pounding on his chest and screaming, trying to get out of his chair, but he couldn't. And I can only imagine what that's like to be stuck in front of something that you do not want to be in front of.
In the human parking lot.
in front of the
Yes.
TV. And to your
Yes.
point, it's typically not something that they're able to comprehend. In fact, it may be contributing to the agitation with overstimulation, especially if it's on live TV with the tickers down below, emblem up here, split screens, all of that.
Right. And I can't pay attention because my brain can't process it. And so I think that for a lot of people, they feel the same way that I do, that regular television programming for people with dementia, not a good idea. And so I think that what our job at Zinnia is to help people understand that the TV can be used in a way that is productive.
Right.
Or you can use a tablet, right? But a large format is certainly much easier for somebody with some of the visual issues that come with dementia or even with old age, right? To be able to focus.
I want to ask a little bit about you, because Productive Passions is all about people who took a chance and followed something that they felt passionate about.
Yeah.
Your story is very personal. You shared that your husband began exhibiting signs of dementia very early on.
Yeah.
What were those first days like, realizing that there wasn't a tool to fix, or there wasn't a medication that was going to fix him? What was that like for you and for your family?
You mean after we'd gotten a diagnosis?
Actually, before you got a diagnosis, when you started seeing symptoms, what was that like for you and for your husband and for your children?
Yeah. So here's something that I think everybody needs to understand. And I think that there's more of an understanding of this now than there used to be. So there is sort of this spectrum of time when your brain is changing prior to getting a diagnosis. And that period of time can be up to 20 years.
Can be how long?
20 years.
20 years before a diagnosis, potentially.
20 years before the symptoms merit a diagnosis. Let me say that. Okay.
Sure.
So I had this lovely opportunity recently to attend an Alzheimer's Association fundraising thing. And I got a chance to chat with Dr. Tom Grabowski, who's with the University of Washington, and he's with the Alzheimer's Disease Resource Center. I mean, he's like the guy, right? He knows everything about dementia. And I said, so here's the thing, Tom, that really I struggle with is knowing that there's this 20-year thing, right? So when somebody gets diagnosed at 82, and then you think, oh, okay, so at 62, their brain was already starting to change. And they may have started, the family in retrospect will look back and say, yeah, when she was 65 and yeah, when she was 68, like they start noticing little things. And I said, but my husband was diagnosed at 47. So does that mean that at 27, his brain was already starting to change? And he said, yep. So here's a man, right, at 27, and it's a frontal lobe dementia. Well, gosh, the frontal lobe doesn't even really work in men until they're
about
right,
that age.
Right. So his brain was like developing and dying at the same time. And so we started seeing things that were uncharacteristic when he was in his 30s. And that was due to those now we know it was due to his brain changes, right? But for me, it presented as a person who suddenly just seemed a lot less interested in me and in the family and in doing things that had once been interesting to him. He became somebody who was distant, who had a lot less interest in, or didn't seem to be able to understand my perspective, who became quite, I hate to use the word narcissistic because it's so overplayed, but really, truly, it became all about him. So if you think about with a frontal lobe dementia, when you're losing executive function, well, gosh, you lose the ability to come up with an idea and see it through to completion. You lose motivation. You lose perspective, right? You lose filters.
Reasoning. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So those were all of the things that we were seeing starting when he was in his early to mid 30s, but just getting worse and worse and worse and worse. So that the 6 years prior to his diagnosis at 47, it was really obvious that something was very, very wrong. But yet we were unable to get a diagnosis because when somebody's in their 40s and they're starting to behave sort of differently, we generally don't go to dementia. We go to mental health issues. Mm. And so we were working with therapists, we were working with a psychiatrist, and nobody went in the dementia direction until after when he was 47. That was when we finally met a psychiatrist. Well, it was actually because I started seeing a therapist because I thought, you know what? I am so committed to my marriage. My kids are 12 and 15, right? Like I am committed to making this family work, but I need help because I cannot be with this man anymore. So how do I be in a marriage with a partner who is really changed? And it was after about 6 months of working with a therapist that we had this whiteboard. I call it the whiteboard day, where I came in and I was like, okay, I'm going to lay out for you everything that's happened since the last time that I saw you, that to me says that this is not just adult onset ADHD, which is what the psychiatrist had diagnosed him with. And I said, this cannot be ADD. Like, it's just not. No. So I laid out all of these things and she was like, holy mackerel, you are right. This is not garden variety ADD. She is the one who turned me on to a psychiatrist who, after meeting with my husband and I, called me up and said, I need to meet with just you. And I came in and I met with her and she said, okay, so here's the deal. There's something very wrong with your husband's brain. And we're going to go through this series of steps and we're going to rule things out. Like, could it be that he has a vitamin B deficiency? Which it could be. Could it be that he has fluid on the brain? Which it could be. Could it be sleep deprivation? Might be. And then at the bottom of the list was, after we cross everything else out, frontotemporal dementia. And that's what it turned out to be.
Well, kudos to her for doing that investigation, but more importantly to you for, man, that was years, Allison. You spent years, first of all, trying to figure you out, and then figure out, wait, something is happening.
Yeah.
You are not a tech person by background.
I am, actually.
Oh, tell me about that, because I want to know, like, how, again, about productive passions is all about people who have an idea and go after it. So tell me about your background, your tech background, and how you decided, okay, these videos are working for my husband. Maybe they'll work for someone else. And by the way, I could talk to you forever, which we won't do. But this is fascinating and it's important. And I think it actually goes beyond just the person with dementia. But let's get back to your background in tech and how you decided to put my videos that seem to be helping my husband into a company that can help so many people.
Sure. I will first just characterize myself as a person who gets laser focused on a concept, right? So whatever that might be. And I generally, just my way of being in the world is that I don't really consider failure an option. And that's not like that doesn't mean that I'm militant about it, but it means that like I don't think about the fact that this might not work. I only focus on the vision in which it's working. And that's just my makeup. It's just who I am in the world. And sometimes that serves me really well. And sometimes it doesn't. But in this case, after creating these little videos and thinking like, oh man, the problem is that I don't have enough content, right? Like I need to get more content. And that led me to reach out to contact a friend at Apple to figure out, how do I get more content and how can I share my videos with other people? And it was that conversation with him that got me really thinking about like, oh, you could actually create something that could be shared with other people.
I'm curious to know, who has influenced you the most in your life? And do they know it?
Well, that's a great question. I think probably my dad, who is no longer with us.
And what's your dad's name?
His name is Arnold.
Okay.
And there are many things that he did that were not amazing, but he had a way of being in the world. His focus was on making other people feel good. I'd be so proud of him. We'd go into the deli and the woman behind the counter and would say, "Good morning, Arnold." And it was like he knew everybody. And he would say, "Why, good morning, Clarice. It's so good to see you today. Aren't you looking, and you'd leave and you could just feel like she just like, just blossomed. And I saw this happen with him over and over and over again. And as he got older, he had this connection with the world that was very spiritual and that was very accepting of where he was. Like, my body doesn't do the things that I want it to do. So instead, I'm going to want to do the things that my body can do.
It sounds like the apple doesn't fall far from the tree in terms of wanting to make other people feel good. I think it seems like you are following in those footsteps. Do you recognize that?
I guess that's why I would consider him an influence, because it's such an important part of my life to, like, I really get how good it feels to help another person feel good. To me, that is, wow, what fuel that is. And when I do something that could be perceived as kind, and somebody will say, wow, that was so kind of you. And I think it was no skin off my back whatsoever. And I feel a little guilty that I feel so good for having helped someone, because it sort of feels like I did it for me.
But don't you think maybe that's by design? That we
You know,
help
it
other
should be,
people
right?
and
I
it
hope
feels
so.
good, and we do
Yes.
it again because we like that dopamine hit. So,
Yeah.
okay, if it feels, maybe it was designed that way.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
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 So, Allison, what's next for you in Zinnia TV? Well, let's
Yeah.
break those out. What's next for Zinnia TV?
What's next for Zinnia TV is that we are developing some new content that I'm really excited about.
And you have a lot of content. For people who haven't seen it yet, there is a lot of content, from babies, watching babies, to kittens, to taking a shower and bathing, and all the ADLs we talked about.
Yeah, and we have a whole new channel that are quizzes that are accessible for people, like, to make people feel good, right? Like, wow, I answered those questions correctly. We've gotten great feedback from people
Wow.
about
Wow.
people who they thought were nonverbal shouting out the answers to the quizzes. Like, wow, that's
I love
pretty
that.
exciting stuff. So we're
Nice.
developing more content that will allow a person who's maybe not programmed to be a caregiver, right? Or maybe they don't really know how to interact with a person with dementia, things that they can watch that can, in and of themselves, promote feedback and responsiveness from the person who's living with dementia, like the quizzes. So that kind of stuff that we're doing. And we're doing some new ADL videos that I'm really excited about too. And
So let me just ask this question. Will that be caregiver education that's part of the new content?
we do have caregiver education that's part of the content already. And yeah, and that's another thing I'm excited about. So I guess while Zinnia was gestating and I had to get a job, like I had to get a job, leaning back into when I was doing tech stuff, one of the things that I did is I taught, and I loved teaching. And so I became a dementia educator. And so for 4 years, I worked in long-term care communities teaching the Washington state mandated curriculum for dementia education. And then I was at the University of Washington for 3 years, involved in an education program. I wasn't the teacher. I was the facilitator of a program where we brought in experts and primary care providers and allied care providers to help them up their game around dementia. But anyway, so having been a dementia educator, and recognizing the importance of that, we did create a bunch of educational content that I'm really proud of. But something that we're about to kick off, which I think is going to be really, really fun, is we're calling it the Dementia Superhero Support Series. I do facilitate several different support groups. One is for spouses of people living with dementia, and the other is through Zinnia. Once a month, we host a free session for our subscribers. Like, just come in and let's just talk about what's working for you and what's not working for you. But this superhero support series is something different, where once a month I'm going to bring in somebody who I consider a superhero in the world of dementia support, to do a 90-minute educational session for family caregivers and professional caregivers if they care to join.
So I want to remind the audience where they can find information. Can you share that website again?
You bet. It's zinniatv.com. Zinnia like the flower. So ZINNIA TV, like television, zinniatv.com.
And if somebody wanted to reach out to you, can they find you on LinkedIn? How would be a good way to reach you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is a great way to find me. It's Allison Schreier. I'm right there, and happy to make connections through LinkedIn.
Allison, what's next for you?
I think what's next for me is that I've been very, very fortunate to have a partner who I met through my dementia support group, right? He lost his wife to Alzheimer's disease. I lost mine to frontotemporal dementia. And we have a lovely partnership, and we've been pushing the boundaries of how much can I travel and work.
I love that. Send me your notes, because
that's my goal, is to keep
that.
Yeah.
Good for you. Okay, last question.
Yes.
Are you looking for investors?
We are not actively seeking investors right now, but we always welcome them.
Okay.
So we did a push back at the end of 2024 where we pulled in some funding that was really just friends and family, and with a few others that we weren't expecting who jumped in. But so we're pretty good right now, but we are always open to inquiries along those lines.
Very good. Well, again, that is xeniatv.com is where you can find and learn more. And my gosh, thank you so much. I know how important this is. I haven't been a caregiver, but I've worked with plenty of caregivers to know that trying to do it all by yourself is so hard. It's not healthy. And so I see Xenia as a really nice solution to not only the person living with dementia, but to the caregivers. And I wasn't aware that there was a community as well. And that's important too. It's important to hear you're not alone.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Yeah.
Allison,
thank you for making this forum available.
Thanks for listening, and thank you to Allison for sharing such an honest, powerful story. If this episode moved or inspired you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe and hit like so more people can find stories of real-life changemakers who took a risk to follow their passions and are changing the world for good. If you want to support us even more, leave a review or tell us on social media what part of Allison's story inspired you. Your voice helps this community grow. I'm Christy Tagey. Let your passion be the spark, and let your courage become someone else's hope. See you next time on Productive Passions.